Hello, everybody. I'm John Van Auken, the director of the Edgar Cayce Foundation here at Virginia Beach's headquarters. And this is the Reflections series. And today I'm going to interview Scott Creighton, the author of 4 really amazing Egyptian books with his ability to do in-depth research into ancient tales and legends, as well as detailed research into facts that have yet been uncovered. I've been studying Egypt for over 30 years, and I still find new information in his books. So let's have Scott Creighton come before us and give us a preview of what he's going to do at the Ancient Mysteries Conference this year. Well, Scott, I want to celebrate your coming to our Ancient Mysteries Conference this October. And this little interview to give our viewers some idea of what you present, I really don't know where to start with you because all your Egypt books are so interesting. They're so well researched. I mean, you bring stuff out that my 30 years of study in Egypt never saw or read about. So they are really interesting. And your latest book, which just came out a month ago on the Void Enigma, which is about that huge open space above the Grand Gallery in the King's Chamber. And A.R.E. Tours has probably chanted in that Grand Gallery for 30 or 40 years. And here we are discovering that above us was a vast opening, and you write about it in your newest book, The Void Enigma. So share a little bit about what you brought up with that research.
Well, John, as you know, the science that discovered this space, I think it was the scientists discovered it, I think, in 2017. And, this to mainstream conventional Egyptology, this was a bolt from the blue. It really was. This came totally left field. No one expected this. No one did. And the reason mainstream Egyptology didn't expect it, John, was because, the Great Pyramid as it stands is the only pyramid that has more than 3 chambers. Presently, we know it has 4 sizable chambers. You've got the subterranean chamber, the Queen's chamber, the King's chamber, and the Grand Gallery, which we know about. So most pyramids in Egypt have only 1 chamber. Most of them, vast majority of them. A couple of them have 3 chambers. I think the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid have 3 chambers. The Great Pyramid's the only one with 4. Yeah, that's 4. And now we discover it's got 5. No, potentially a new chamber. So, Egyptology, the Great Pyramid was already difficult for Egyptologists because it had this Grand Gallery. What on earth was that all about? They can't really figure it out. The Grand Gallery, the massive Grand Gallery that they know about, they can't figure that out. Where does it fit into the paradigm, the Tomb of the Pharaoh paradigm? Where does it fit in? They struggle to do it. And then another one comes along, another chamber. They're like, so they're really, really struggling to fit this new chamber into the paradigm. So that, is what I try to explain in the new book. Because, John, and this is what I've been saying in many of my books in the past, is that Egyptology should be a little bit more circumspect. They should give a bit more credence to what the ancient Egyptians themselves have told us.
Oh, yes.
And stop trying to force our modern ideas onto the past. Because, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Egyptologists are idiots or Far from it. They've done an amazing job in a lot of areas of ancient Egypt. Absolutely outstanding work they have, and you've got to compliment them for that. But this blanket dismissal of the ancient texts, the ancient Egyptians themselves. I'm talking here about the Coptic Egyptian oral traditions that have been passed down to us, just get ignored.
Yes.
And John, if modern Egyptology had just taken a little bit more time and considered what these ancient Coptic Egyptian texts are telling us, the answer's in there. The answer as to what the Grand Gallery is and what this big void is are in those texts, but they just ignored it. And this is what the new book basically is about. It goes through the Coptic text and shows how these Coptic texts tell us what these chambers are and why they were put inside the Great Pyramid.
That is the great thing about your books, is you bring in legend and lore from the original people going way back. And in those tales, they reveal so much.
Yeah.
And give you hints at why this was done and what this is for. And I think it's fascinating how you built that in the enigma of this unusually open space above the Grand Gallery.
Yeah. The Coptic Egyptian texts, and they're often sort of written in allegorical terms. So
Yes.
You've got to kind of try and understand, well, what does that actually mean? It can be quite sort of abstract, embroidered language a lot of the time, and you've got to try and work your way through that to get to the kind of deeper meaning of what they're trying to tell us. In one of the texts, we're told that ancient Egyptian. There's this ancient legend that tells us the pyramids were built by the stones being covered by a paper and being struck by a metal rod, and then they would fly up, onto the pyramid. Now that may sound absurd,
Yeah.
John, and just face value, it sounds totally absurd, but actually, John, when you look into it, when you look into these Coptic texts and you actually dig a bit deeper, you actually realise, well, wait a minute, no, this actually makes sense because of this, and this. And I explain that, I think, in one of my earlier books, The Secret Chamber of Osiris. I explain about these stones flying to the pyramid and what it actually means and how it's actually hard science.
Yeah.
That, could make this happen, and it's not just a ridiculous idea. And over and above which, there's a lot of evidence which supports it around the Giza Plateau and in various temples around Egypt, which supports this idea of the stones flying to the pyramid. Now, I know that may sound really strange, but what we're actually talking about is simple thermodynamics. They discovered simple thermodynamics, and that is how they did it. And when you realize it, it just becomes so blindingly obvious.
In that book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris, you cover 16 pyramids.
Yeah.
That's a lot of evidence.
Yeah. Well, what that's about, John, is, again, we are told from the ancient Egyptian text, and in this case, the pyramid texts, which have been interpreted by Plutarch, and so on, the tale of Osiris and Isis and Osiris, and how Osiris's evil brother Seth was jealous of Osiris, and he was king, and Seth wanted to be king, and he hatched this plot against Osiris, and he cut Osiris's body into 14 pieces. Some versions of the legend tell us it was 16 pieces, and he scattered these across the land of Egypt. Now, if you look at the first 16 pyramids that the ancient Egyptians built, and you look at them on Google Map, John, I couldn't believe it when I saw it myself.
Yeah.
They make, the classic iconic figure of Osiris, with
Yeah.
the Atif crown, the 3-point Atif crown, the crook and flail, the statue, the iconic statue of Osiris, these pyramids dotted along down the banks of the Nile, 16 of them, and I'm thinking, and then, the pyramid texts themselves, John, they tell us quite explicitly this construction of the pyramids is Osiris. Yeah. Osiris is the pyramids. That's what it says in the pyramid text. And this is why, this shape, one of the epithets or titles of Isis, the wife of Osiris, is mistress of the pyramids.
Yes.
That's one of her epithets, mistress of the pyramids. And now we know why, because Osiris is the pyramids.
Right.
She's the wife, the mistress of Osiris, who is the pyramids. That's why she gets the epithet mistress of the pyramids, because Osiris quite literally was the pyramids. This was the response of the ancient kingdom to a foretold calamity. This was their response. This was what I call Project Osiris. It was about rebirth and regeneration, not initially of the king, John, but of the kingdom.
Yeah.
This is why they built all these pyramids, because it tells us in the Coptic Egyptian narratives that have come down to us, it tells us in those narratives that the pyramids were built because King Saurid saw, or his astronomer priests saw something in the heavens, in the stars.
Right.
The stars were moving in a different way. They were going off their normal course. Now, John, as you know, stars don't generally do that. What's happening here is it's the Earth below the stars that's, changing its course. So he asked his astronomer priests, what does this mean? They tell Saurid, they say, it means that in 300 years there will be a great deluge, a great flood. And what Saurid then says is, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to create a massive regeneration project. We're going to build pyramids, and into these pyramids we are going to place everything that the kingdom will need after the flood has abated, the deluge has passed. Everything that the kingdom will need to be reborn. And that is what they did. And John, it's so patently obvious that that's what they did.
Yeah.
You look at the step pyramid at Saqqara. It's got this great big stone, for want of a better word, stone column. It's hollow, it's got 4 sides.
Yep.
At the center of the step pyramid at Saqqara. Now, that wasn't just to lower the body of Zoser down this to the so-called burial chamber below it. This was originally a grain silo. It was originally a grain silo, massive grain silo, which they filled, and it filtered the grain, filtered out into various magazines below the step pyramid at Saqqara. Now, I think it was Colin Firth Cecil Firth back in the early 20th century, 1920s, something like that. Now, something like 3.5 miles of passages below the step pyramid.
Yeah.
They go everywhere. And he was walking practically up to his knees through grain passages filled with grain.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other seed types they have found inside that pyramid. There's also evidence that the Great Pyramid itself once contained massive amounts of grain. So this is what the ancient Coptic Egyptian texts tell us was the purpose of the pyramids, was a rebirth machine, a rebirth project for the kingdom. Eventually, over time, this idea of the pyramid as some kind of rebirth machine, evolved into being the rebirth machine of the king himself.
Yeah.
But originally, The Coptic Egyptian text, this is what they tell us. I'm not making this up. This is what they tell us, is that these were arks, basically. These pyramids, these first 16 pyramids, the body of Osiris scattered across the land. That's just an allegorical tale, you know.
Yeah.
The story of Osiris and Seth, and Osiris's body being cut up and being placed in a box and placed into the Nile where he drowned. That's an allegorical tale of the coming flood, of the deluge that was to come, and then his body being cut into 16. His body being cut into 16 pieces. It's just an allegorical tale. These were arks. And if you look at, John, the early fathers of the Christian church, if you read like Origen's homilies, they tell us that the pyramids from the very earliest times were regarded as arks.
This is the amazing thing about your books, is the depth of research you did to bring these ancient elements to the modern story.
Well, they were always there, John.
Yeah.
This is the thing. They were always there. They were in plain sight, but they were just ignored. This is what I say. I am arguing this case in all of my books. I'm making this point about the pyramids as a recovery system for the kingdom, because that's what the Coptic Egyptians tell us. Now, the Coptic Egyptians, they're ignored largely by mainstream Egyptology. And you'll hear some people saying silly things like, well, Coptic Egyptians, they're only 2,000 years at the birth of Christianity. How could they know about this? Well, I'm sorry, but just because you change a religion, doesn't mean, from one day to the next, doesn't mean all your cultural heritage that you've had for thousands of years is suddenly dumped and forgotten about.
Right.
It's like the Coptic Egyptians, had these legends, these oral legends. Now, which seems strange because the Egyptians were one of the world's first, civilizations to use reading and writing. They invented writing and paper and so forth. And yet, their descendants reverted to the oral tradition, which seems a bit strange, but it's not. It's perfectly explained because Egypt was invaded 3 times under Alexander the Great, under Augustus Caesar, and the Caliph Omar in about 800 or 700, something like that, AD.
Yeah.
And they were persecuted, and these were brutal persecutions of the people in Egypt in these times. And so they were not permitted to have their books. They were not permitted even to talk about their past. So their history had to be kept secret, and they did that through the oral tradition. They passed these stories down through the oral tradition. And it really irks me, John. It really irks me sometimes when I hear people referring to these Coptic Egyptian oral traditions as Arabic traditions.
Yeah,
They're not Arabic traditions.
No.
The Arabic scholars, to their credit, merely interpreted the Coptic Egyptian oral legends because there was no longer any books containing the Coptic Egyptian history written down. So the Arabic scholars, to their great credit, wrote these traditions down, and that's how they've been passed on down to us today, although the Coptic Egyptians, even today, still pass these legends down orally. So they're not Arabic legends.
No.
They're Coptic Egyptian legends, and the Coptic Egyptian people themselves, they claim to be the direct descendants of the original ancient Egyptian people, all the way back to the pyramid builders. That is what they claim even to this day. So, there's so much there that has been ignored, And if it hadn't been ignored, you know, we may, in the past, say 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, we may be somewhere different today, but I guess we are where we are, and I'm just glad that I'm trying to bring this, this forward.
In our last few minutes here, let's talk on the hoax of the Cartouche. That's a fascinating book. You really did some detailed research and investigation.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of research, a ton of what you would call hard empirical evidence in that book that raises so many serious anomalies with Colonel Howard Weiss's claimed discovery of these painted quarry marks. And these painted quarry marks, they are basically the key piece of evidence that Egyptologists today have to directly connect the Great Pyramid with the Pharaoh Khufu. Now, I'm not saying, John, that Khufu didn't build the pyramid. All I'm pointing out is that those marks are seriously dodgy. You know, there's so much wrong. And I present, since hoax was published on, I found a whole ton of new evidence about the hoax, which is in the appendices of the new book, The Great Pyramid Void Enigma. So if you're still interested in that, there's a whole bunch of new evidence that's recently come to light, which for me is just, it's a slam dunk that those marks are not genuine.
Wow. I remember a couple of years when I was deeply involved in all of this, that I read where they now were trying to claim that Khufu was misspelled. Do you remember that bogus?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think it was Zechariah Sitchin that made that claim, John. But Sitchin was working from, you know, a book which was really poorly printed. It was really poorly printed, and you know, he kind of got some of it wrong. I don't really want to go into the detail, but he made some pretty bad mistakes, which meant that people like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval and people like that distanced themselves from Sitchin's forgery claim. But I've looked at it in a lot more depth. Serious. I mean, I found Weiss's handwritten notes, his field notes, not his published book. Not his published book where it's all sanitized and, he's presenting what he wants to present. I found his notes, his inner thoughts, and it's right there in those diaries, those handwritten notes of Howard Weiss. This is blatant. One of the passages that actually writes in this is for Raven and Hill. These are his two assistants. For Raven and Hill, here is the cartouche to inscribe over any plain low trussing. Trussings like that's exactly what you have in the top chamber of it's a roof trussing like that. It's written there in his book. I mean, how much more proof do people need? See, all of these books. Sorry, not his book, his notes. Not his book, his private notes.
His notes.
Not written in the book.
Right.
It's in the private notes.
Private notes, yeah. See, that's the great thing about all of your books is you bring in legend, lore, tales from the original people. Then you do real intense research and investigation into every detail. I really am impressed. And I'm looking so forward to having you at our Ancient Mysteries Conference this year.
John, I am so looking forward to it. I just wish I was able to be there in person. With the whole COVID thing and everything, it was just becoming too problematic at this end of things and here in the UK and stateside as well. It was too up in the air and too uncertain. So I thought, well, Scott, you need certainty in your head here, So I thought, so I contacted the guy, the organizers there.
We totally understand. The world is upside down right now with this COVID and the Delta variant. It's safer and better. But our people are going to see you very well through the Zoom connection for the conference. Yeah,
I'll have my screen shared.
Good.
I've got my presentation not quite ready, but I've been working on it, so it's starting to take shape.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for letting us have a preview. and getting to know you even better. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it, John. It's great to speak to you again, and hopefully it won't be, well, October. Yeah.
Yeah, October. Well, see you then. Bye-bye.
See you then. Take care. Bye-bye.